In a small, mist-covered village nestled deep in the woods, there was a tale passed down from generation to generation. The elders spoke of the the wisps, ghostly lights that flickered in the swamp on moonless nights. They warned travelers to never follow the lights, for they were not what they seemed. Years ago, a curious young woman named Eliza lived in the village. Unlike the others, she had always been fascinated by the legends. One evening, she decided to venture into the swamp, determined to find the truth behind the mysterious lights. As night fell, she reached the edge of the swamp and waited. The air grew thick and still, and soon faint bluish lights began to appear in the distance, bobbing and swaying as if inviting her to follow. Ignoring the warnings that echoed in her mind, Eliza pressed on, her feet sinking into the damp earth with every step. The lights danced just out of reach, luring her deeper into the heart of the swamp. The trees grew twisted and gnarled, their branches clawing at the sky like skeletal hands. The air turned colder, and the sounds of the village faded away, replaced by an eerie silence. Hours passed, yet Eliza felt no closer to catching the lights. The deeper she went, the more disoriented she became. Shadows twisted in the corners of her vision, and whispers echoed from unseen places. The lights grew brighter and more numerous, surrounding her now, flickering with an unnatural, almost malevolent energy. Suddenly, she realized she was lost. The swamp stretched endlessly in all directions, a labyrinth of dead trees and murky water. The lights no longer seemed playful. They flickered violently, darting closer and then retreating, as if taunting her. Panic set in as she spun in circles, trying to find her way out. But there was no path back, only the haunting lights and the thickening mist. Then, out of the darkness, a figure appeared. It was a man, his clothes tattered and his eyes hollow. His face was gaunt and pale, as if drained of life. He reached out a trembling hand to her and spoke in a voice that crackled like dead leaves. "Turn back before it's too late. They feed on those who stray too far." Before Eliza could ask who he was, the lights swarmed around him, and his figure dissolved into the mist as if he had never existed. The lights pulsed with a sinister hunger, closing in on her now. Eliza's heart raced as she stumbled backward, but the ground beneath her gave way, plunging her into a freezing, bottomless mire. She struggled to keep her head above the water, but it was as if invisible hands were pulling her down. The last thing she saw was the swarm of lights hovering just above her, flickering in a mocking dance. By morning, the swamp was still again, cloaked in mist as always. Eliza was never seen again, but the villagers say that on moonless nights, if you stand at the edge of the swamp, you can see the wisps dancing in the distance. Some say they move in a pattern, like someone is trying to find their way home. And if you listen closely, you might hear faint, desperate cries carried on the wind. But the villagers know better than to follow the lights, for they understand now. The wisps are not just lights, they are the souls of those who were lost to the swamp, forever luring others to share their fate.